Ameera Beth, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. I decided to contact you and get you on after I listened to that recent interview you did with James Gilliland. And like I told you when I saw you, you look familiar. I swear I've seen you at some conference. It's somewhere along the line. Um, but I've been to a lot of conferences. I see a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that I can't believe I haven't seen at a conference yet. But that's kind of beside the point. The point right now is I have you on here on the 5th of February to discuss not just who you are, but also the Atlantis Lemuria stuff, stuff pertaining to mermaids, fascinating creatures. And no doubt they exist in some way, even in this realm or dimension. They're certainly somewhere else in some other realm or dimension or something. But you'll get into the details on that. So without further ado, why don't I actually, before I shut up and let you talk, a couple quick disclaimers to the listeners. I'm still not getting any money off Patreon. I don't know what you guys' problem is. I mean, is it really that much to ask that you pay your one of your radio uh, people as a little money so you can listen to the interviews as soon as possible and get the information as soon as possible? Even though I upload it to YouTube, public for everybody, 2 to 3 weeks after the interview now. I mean, does that really mean that you have to wait that long? I mean, hey, everybody's chomping at the bit to try to make a little more money now and is struggling to make ends meet. But people like Akashic Records and Andrew Bartz have said it is in the best interest of for people to try to monetize their work as best that they can in this day and age. And I've been trying, but it's not really getting me anywhere. So if there's anyone who can subscribe on Patreon for me to help me make a little money and get you the chance to be able to listen to these interviews sooner before I upload them to YouTube and also Cost.tv, by all means do. And with that being said, since I mentioned Cost.tv, that is the other place besides YouTube where I upload my shows. It is a blockchain profit channel. The more people that listen to that channel, my shows on that channel, the more money I can actually make, the more cryptocurrency I can make. It's not much, but it is better than nothing. So after I upload this interview to YouTube, after the 2 weeks are up and I make it public for everybody, I will also make it public on Cost.tv and provide the link for everybody to listen to it on Cost.tv. I would prefer all my listeners listen to it on Cost.tv so I can generate a profit. Only listen to it for 15 seconds on YouTube, please, for the sake of giving me a YouTube view credit. And after those 15 seconds are up, please click on the link in the video description to listen to the interviews from now on for my show on Cost.tv. There's always going to be a little bit of a delay from when the YouTube video is uploaded and the Cost.tv is uploaded. It takes a couple hours. At least to upload videos to Cost.tv, and they only allow for 1 hour uploads max, so I often have to break my shows into two parts. But again, I'd rather people listen to that than YouTube because I can profit from that. So I got that out. That's enough of that. Ameera Beth, interesting things that you said in your talk with James Gilliland, and well, you seem like a someone who you'd like to spend some time with, considering that people would like to spend time with you, considering that you offer retreats to Hawaii. That's a place everybody would like to get away to. I was actually thinking about going there myself this year for a conference that Andromeda Council contacted Tolek was going to offer at some point during the late summer, early fall. Although after recently checking my Chinese zodiac horoscope year the metal ox we're about to enter, it says for tigers like I, travel is not going to be very good this year, so I may have to postpone that if anything in the horoscope says travel will be bad luck this year, because it only gave me 1 out of 5 stars for travel, and kind of going to Hawaii from Pennsylvania, a lot of jet lag for sure, kind of violates the not a good year for travel doctrine and may cause some problems. Well, maybe you can convince me otherwise and show me that maybe there's no reason for people who see travel not being good in their horoscopes. They shouldn't take that as a sign that they shouldn't travel. And Hawaii. I mean, people would if they had the chance to go to Hawaii to swim with dolphins or whatever, they'd probably take it if it was for a bargain and all, even if they're um, horoscope said travel is bad, so maybe we'll get into that, and I'll give you the chance to make a sales pitch out of this too with the products you offer. I do see there's a shop section on your website, and also the courses and retreats, but that's going to be later on when I give you the chance to make a sales pitch out of this. Right now, I want to know who you are, and what you experience. You refer to yourself as a mer healer. I presume mer is short for mermaid or merman, or so. Why don't you enlighten us on who you are, what you experienced, everything that you saw and heard, and everything using your senses that you witnessed, experienced, that allows you to do the stuff that you do and be the person you are today. You got the floor. I will shut up and put myself on mute, and I promise not to interrupt you.
Aloha, Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's always really fun for me to be on a show like James, and then have other shows reach out and want to hear what I have to say. And what I'm going to share with you in your show is going to be a lot different than what I've shared previously. So it'll be new information, to you and maybe to your listeners, new topics. I really want to talk about Atlantis. What I am really here to do as an incarnated Mer being, and the Mer and Mer healer is about water. Mer is about just the water in general. That is the element that I hold the strongest. It is the element of my soul. And I think, like most of us, most people are really attracted to the ocean. When you say bodies of water.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, bodies of water, particularly the ocean, it seems to be universal, that is where humans feel the clearest, the strongest, the happiest, the calmest. Water is just an all-around healing substance, which makes sense since we grow in amniotic fluid for 9 months and our bodies are 70% water and the ocean is 70% water. So when I talk about being a Mer healer, I really access from a soul level the element of water. And I can talk a little bit more about original water and how water came to Earth in the program if you like. But that is how I provide, or I allow for healing in my clients. And it's really through the water that I hold in my energy field and in my soul lineage.
Yes, you say you know a thing or two about how water got to Earth. The consensus among mainstream science is that, well, first of all, they say Earth is 75% water. No, that's only the surface. As far as mass goes, the Earth has significantly less water than that. There's a lot more rock and earth material, and then there is water if you were to look at the bottom of the ocean downward. And but as far as how it got there, little meteorites, just a tiny little meteorite, I heard on some program, is about 5% water, and Earth as a whole may have a little more than 5% water in it. But I mean, uh, even some meteorites would certainly have, I'm sure, a little more than 5% water. And if planet Earth were formed by a lot of comets and asteroids and meteors coming together, and the total composition of the water would eventually have to coalesce and form as water, or settle as water, I should say, at some point, be it salt water or fresh water or whatever. And like the total mass of the Earth, if Earth were like compared to an asteroid or a comet, it would probably, like I said, be a little more than 5%, but not so much more that the idea that all the asteroids and comets coming together to form a planet, by whatever means the universe uses to make planets, would be the simple answers to where all the water came from anyway. But is it actually maybe a lot more complicated than that? Where do you?
I think it's a lot more simple.
Okay. How do
I'll
you
tell
see
you what I
see it?
remember. I remember, and you are correct, water came from outer space. Water fell to the Earth from outer space in the form of different asteroids and comets. But original water came first from a star system known as Mintonka in Orion's belt, which is the blue planet. It's the blue water planet. And I remember coming to Earth, my consciousness coming to Earth with original water from Mintonka. So the Mer beings came from Mintonka originally and fell to Earth and formed original water on this planet. How's that for scientific remembrance? Not so scientific.
Well,
Water is more complex and more simple than what we know. And at one time, we know this Earth was the planet was covered in water, right? Before the formations of the continents, before the formations of the mountains,
yeah,
the
I
Earth
believe I've heard that we were covered
was
in
water.
water.
And we know this because there's seashells in the Sahara. So how would something like that get there unless this Earth was totally or mostly comprised of water? So the water that is on this planet at this time has always been here. The water on this planet that originally fell has been evaporated up into the clouds and recycled back down as rain. You know, we drink it, we sweat or urinate, it comes up out of our bodies, goes back to the clouds and recycled back down to the planet. So water is the primordial element of this planet. It's the most ancient and most powerful element. And we know from Dr. Emoto's work that water holds memory, yeah? So the water on this planet holds the memory. It has recorded everything that has ever happened in Earth's history. And I find that just so amazing. And then when you marry that with how people are, how naturally humans are just drawn to water and want to be around bodies of water, it begins to make sense that our history, you know, with the element of water, and I mean, there's even a theory that says that humans evolved from water beings because of the way, you know, our hair goes in the line in our nostrils and the flaps in our nostrils, that there are many things about us that resemble ocean creatures. So when I talk about water and working with the water element, that's something that obviously we all contain, but it is what is sourced through me as source to bring back as far as remembrances and activations of ancient history and ancient lands like Atlantis, Lemuria, and even the existence of the Mer people and a Mer kingdom.
Interesting. Now, when we think of mermaids, I guess the most well known of them is the mermaid from the Hans Christian Andersen tale. My mother, many years ago, when she was a young girl, did get to see that statue in Denmark of the Little Mermaid, and that is one of the places I have personally listed on my bucket list as a place I'd like to visit at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I seem to have a thing with mermaids. They seem to resonate with me and all that, and of course that Little Mermaid movie kind of kickstarted the Disney Renaissance, but Disney is so evil, it's ridiculous. There's a lot of dark side of
Right.
that, like the fact that one of the palace spires looks like a phallus, but okay, let's not get there. There's more important things to talk about than this sinister things Disney made with that movie. Mermaids, anything but sinister. They're supposed to be very loving people, and I believe I did see a documentary on maybe Zohar Ancient Discoveries or Zohar TV, one of those YouTube channels, mentioning how the New Guinea or Papua New Guinea, New Guinea's the island, Papua New Guinea's the half country, the other half is Indonesia, is a hot spot on Earth anyway, of where people tend to see mermaids that I would believe would be of a Lemurian kind, because that's in the Pacific. Um, but what do I know? You seem to say that mermaids have a lot to do with Atlantis as well, and well, I'm covering a lot of things at once here. So why don't we start with who mermaids are, what they aren't, where they come from? Are they elementals from another dimension, as in like you really can't run into one in this dimension? You have to change your frequency in order to be able to see one, or they have to change their frequency to come to this world? Is that how it works, like Sasquatch do? And is there any planets in the universe? Can you name any planets by name in their star system where they seem to be very common creatures mermaids are?
So we are not really elementals. We are classified often as an elemental, but we are beyond that. We don't consider ourselves to be elementals. We kind of consider ourselves to be our own, I don't know, species. So there are similarities to, you know, nymphs and sprites and things like that that really are considered elementals. But the Mer, we do not consider ourselves to be that. The Mer mostly came from Mintaka, and then there are other star systems that we originate from as well. And Mer come in all types of, the idea of the beautiful mermaid that you see in the depictions is really a human interpretation. We look in general more like fish, or we look in general more prehistoric than we do like beautiful human forms. When you see those beautiful human form depictions, that's often been a shapeshift into a form that's going to make humanity more comfortable with what we look like. The form that I remember in the Mer is very different than that. I remember big, wide-set fish eyes, long, beautiful hair, of course, the skin being more like a snake skin type, smooth, but like kind of with some perforations in it, very, very thick and very warm. I remember my long tail. All the Mer have very long, beautiful tails. Some have short tails, but we look more prehistoric than what you would think. And some look very, very prehistoric. So there's different varieties of Mer and Mer people and mermen. There's as many different varieties as, if you think about, extraterrestrials and all the different variations of extraterrestrials, we're like that. The ones that are the most prehistoric stay in the depths of the oceans and the depths of the dimensions. They are not the kind that will come to surface and people will say, well, I've had a mermaid sighting. And most of the ocean is unexplored, and that's where a lot of the Mer reside. We are interdimensional creatures. We are beyond this dimension and also a part of this dimension. And have you noticed the big mermaid craze that's been gone on the last few years, Andrew? Like, mermaids are everywhere.
I think that was one of the things mentioned in that documentary I saw that mentioned the New Guinea area as a hotspot, but they did say it's not just in New Guinea. It's
No, I'm talking about in contemporary time. Like, the world is mermaid crazy. Every girl wants a tail. You've got Starbucks with their split siren tail. Mermaid iconography on this planet right now is an all-time high. Right?
I don't know. I guess it. I guess
Okay.
so.
If you go and you Google mermaids on YouTube, you will see mermaid parties all over the place. You will see, women and men who want to take on that mermaid personification. The iconography is just huge. There's been this huge, over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, of this uprising of the mermaid form, of the mermaid story. We're seeing Aquaman. We're seeing a remake of The Little Mermaid. We're seeing TV shows being produced that have mer beings in them. So you have to ask yourself, like, why all of a sudden is the collective, is something coming from an unconscious, some mythical being coming up and being put into the collective consciousness so strongly? Like, you've noticed that a little bit, yeah?
Sorry, I was on mute. Well, actually, I wasn't on mute. And I thought I was, but yes, I will say it does seem to be a little more prominent in the present day. Although that may only be, I've noticed that because I tend to look into this kind of stuff a little bit more. I don't know if someone who would look into this stuff their whole life, much longer than I have, would say, oh, it's always been a popular thing, not necessarily more so today than it has been in the past, but I'll take your word for it, though. I can certainly see that the idea of mermaids existing is not a giggle factor, laughable kind of thing as much as it used to have been. I mean, especially when the idea that different beings of different consciousness levels can exist at different dimensions, and you would have to think, okay, well, maybe not in this reality, some other reality they could certainly exist. In fact, some people would say they must exist by virtue of the fact that anything that the human mind or any mind can imagine has to exist by the laws of consciousness manifesting and the mathematical odds of probability allow for it to be a it must exist kind of thing, and there must be an infinite amount of them, even though they may be spaced far and wide, there's still an infinite amount of them. So,
Well, those of us who remember Armor Life, and I work with and meet many, many women and some men too, who really believe and know that in another existence is another aspect of them that is Mer. And they remember that aspect of themselves because, you know, we're multidimensional beings. We have many, many aspects and variations of ourselves. There are many, many on this planet. There are children who are being born that I speak with all the time, and they know that they are Mer. They know that they are incarnated Mer beings. And, you know, I work as a past life regressionist. And when I had my first past life regression, so part of my spiritual awakening and coming into, you know, all these kinds of things and talking about Atlantis came from my very first past life regression experience about maybe 12 years ago. I was kind of newly awakened, and I was meditating one day, and I started having this experience in my body where my hands and arms would rise up on their own and do these like graceful, swimmy-like motions in the air. And I thought at first it was maybe angels playing with me or something. I didn't know. But if I just yielded to an energy flowing around me and through me, my arms would start to move by themselves, like I was swimming in the air and making these motions in the air. And I realized after yielding to it, working with it for a while, it was in my whole body. My whole body, when I yield to it, will move and sway and writhe and move independent of me asking it to. And I didn't know what was going on. And I talked to many healers and psychics, and they could not tell me what was happening. But I did find that I could go to other people, my children, the person I was married to, and my hands and arms would move in these spiral-like fashions, and I could do healings on them. Headaches would go away. My children would go to sleep. Body pains would start to ease in other people. Energy centers would start to clear. So whatever was moving through me, as me, was trying to help me realize that there was something that I was connected to that had this lovely soothing and healing quality to it. So I ended up in the office of a past life regression therapist by the name of Julia Ingram, who was a very well-known clinical psychologist and therapist in Portland, Oregon, where I used to live. And I just told her, I said, I have this stuff going on in my body. I don't know what it is, but I have been reading about past life regression therapy. I said, I really feel like I need to have a session and find out what this is. And so she put me on the couch and she did her little hypnotic induction and, you know, asked me to go into another realm. And immediately I started physically leaping with my hands in the air on her couch, up and down, saying, I'm a mermaid, I'm a mermaid. And at that time, I didn't even really know mermaids were a real thing. I just thought that they were, you know, cartoons, maybe some fun thing. You know, it wasn't a real thing in my mind that they could exist. But I saw myself, I felt myself, and I was doing this somatically, physically on her couch, swimming down in the ocean to a city, to the city under the ocean. And of course, I thought I was making the whole thing up. And she just went along right with me and kept asking me questions. And the experience was so real and palpable and felt so true and she took me through this whole experience where I was letting her know about this city under the water that I was exploring, the other mer beings that were around me. I talked about, you know, the fish and the dolphins and the ancient ruins. And when I came up out of the session, I absolutely knew to the core of my being that I was Mer, that I experienced a lifetime being Mer. And after going through many other regressions, and, you know, you do the soul work and things, I was told that I am an incarnated Mer being, and that there are many, many, many incarnated Mer beings on this planet at this time. Men and women who literally are remembering or experiencing an aspect of themselves that is Mer in a human body.
Well, that's not so hard to believe. Humans being genetic royalty from a extraterrestrial race standpoint. One of the reasons there's so many ETs visiting planets because we're genetic royalty. So says Alex Collier. It stands to reason that the mer genetics would also
It,
be in us, even though we don't look like mermaids. But
exactly. And you can often tell a mer being, you can often look at a woman and she just has that essence about her, or that energy around her of being mer. Or you can look at some men and you can tell that their origin is a mer soul. Just like you can look at, like, some of the humans who they're an incarnate extraterrestrial of some sort, right? You can just see by how they hold themselves, how they speak, how they look. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I look at somebody, I can go, oh, well, you're Palladian or you're Syrian or whatever, because you just get that sense of the personality and of the energy imprint. So there are reasons that there are so many men and women, mostly women, who are incarnate mer beings at this time. And the reason that the iconography has become so important to pop culture, along with movies and TV shows and books about Atlantis and even Lemuria. Those ancient lands that were once looked at as mythical or looked at as maybe make-believe are coming into the consciousness, into the forefront of people's minds and people's knowingness, that these are actually societies that we once participated with, that have left an imprint in us energetically, and also in the karmic process of the earth from the fall of Atlantis, and maybe even the direction that that humanity and that the planet is trying to go to try and redeem or redevelop some of those the societies of Atlantis, the consciousness of Atlantis and the consciousness of Lemuria, and trying to go back and on this spiral of time and recreate something that was so magnificent at one time.
all right, so why don't we get into what exactly Atlantis and Lemuria were and what they weren't. So many different things have been written about this, especially more so for Atlantis and Lemuria, of course. Um, One of the more jaw-dropping books that I read on the subject was Michael Tsarian's book. I think the title was something like Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation, or something like that. He made the radical claims that Atlantis and Lemuria actually existed at the same time, and that he also said that when Atlantis came to an end, like 13,000 years ago, he actually makes the assertion there never was an ice age. And he says that if Atlantis truly was a like civilization living on a lost continent in the ocean that spread out global colonies all over the earth, then the idea that there was an ice age during that time makes no sense, because the ice age would have kept them from being able to colonize the world. But it's a shame I don't remember everything that Brad Johnson, who channels the Dronus, talked about when I asked him about this subject at the conference that I saw him at a couple Januaries ago, but in Orlando. But I asked about this, like, what's the deal with the ice ages that were said to have existed during the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, and was it not a burden to the people of Atlantis and Lemuria, or did they have like a high level of consciousness that prevented it from being a burden for them? That if you attain higher consciousness, that you don't have to worry about the weather because you can overpower the weather and the
Well,
climate.
there were five incarnations of Atlantis. There
All
were
right, please
five
give
different
us the history
Atlantean
lesson.
experiments. So the fall you're talking about, 13,000 years ago, there were four other incarnations of Atlantis before that. And I would guess the ice age would have been during one of those, or in between one of those incarnations, and it wasn't the fall 13,000 years ago. That's the one I mostly teach and talk about. Atlantis was not a lost continent or a lost island. When people say lost, they mean it was lost to the ocean. It wasn't like some little place nobody knew about, lost in the ocean, you know, a lost island. It was a vast, vast continent and civilization, enormous. Where do you want me to go from there?
Well, also the you say they're incarnations of Atlantis and Lemuria.
Yes.
I can certainly believe that. Was it one after the other, or did they exist at the same time, or is it so complex that when we talk about time, because I know I seem to recall Andrew Bartzis, the Akashic Records reader, having said that there was a lot of time travel of sorts going on regarding Atlantis
Yes.
and Lemuria. And if that's the case, then
All of the above. So Mu,
okay,
the motherland, was first. Mu and Lemuria were first. And then later came Atlantis. Atlantis was a separate experiment than Mu and Lemuria, separate races of beings that inhabited. And there was a time when Atlantis and Lemuria did exist side by side in the same realm of reality or spiral of time, whatever you want to call it. And they had a war. There was a great war between them. That caused a lot of continued fallout and karma and whatnot for the next experiments of Atlantis. The Lemurians were very earth-loving, very simple but profound and deeply connected to Gaia, more like the indigenous people we know today. Very peace-loving, very creative, lived very close to the earth, and the Atlanteans were more, you know, the scientific, technology-oriented, right-brained, but beautiful, beautiful beings. The Atlanteans were beautiful beings, and the original intention of Atlantis, the original experiment, was to see if fifth-dimensional beings could exist in a third-dimensional body and still retain their connection to source. You know, come down and be of the five senses, and you know, smell flowers, have sex, eat delicious food, all the things we get to enjoy being human, and stay devoid of ego and stay connected to their, you know, fifth dimensional and above consciousness. That was the experiment. And that experiment happened 5 times, because each time, as within the experiment, what do you have to do to have an experiment? You have to add a variable, right? You have to do something to mess with the experiment. So if you have this utopian civilization where nothing ever goes wrong and everybody's batting 1,000 all the time, and everybody has perfect skin and perfect hair and perfect lives and their energy is all in alignment, there's really no experiment. So you have to add something that kind of messes things up. And the pre-planned addition to Atlantis was the insertion of some sort of ego, or something that would challenge the Atlantean people in some way as they were being human, to see if they could still maintain their connection. So, you know, we hear about like the dark element being let in, or like, you know, ego being let in through other beings who begin to insert ideas and energies into maybe the leadership of the Atlanteans, you know, to the scientists, the priest and priestess. They started to give them other ideas. They started to introduce the idea of competition and the idea of envy and the idea of physical appearance or something being better than another. And so as they started to insert these ideas into, you know, the leaders, like, hey, you know, you're a really good scientist. You're a way better scientist than this guy. Why you got the same house as him? Why do you wear the same clothes as he does? You're really so much more talented. So, you know, you see what I'm saying? That idea of competition and that idea of better than, less than. When that started to go into as a program into the minds of the Atlanteans, it began to set off like a virus, and it began to change the way they thought, the way they acted, and the way they treated one another, because suddenly there was ego involved. And then there's also the technology concept also, where you know, the Atlanteans were highly technologically talented. genetic modification. We can talk a little bit about that too, because I remember being a part of that. I remember the aspect of my soul who participated in those experiments, and that's part of the karma I'm here to balance in this life.
Well, okay. Why don't we get into that
Okay.
genetic manipulation thing? Because in the Lance White, Andrew Bartzis 30-part series from 2013, and like in part 2, one of the hot talking points was the Anunnaki creation story of them coming to Earth 450,000 years ago, and the genetic engineering Earth, the humans about 300,000 years ago. But Bartzis said that Lemuria, not Atlantis, but Lemuria, had fallen and collapsed shortly before then, and what was left over on Earth was what was left over of that collapse, and well, the Anunnaki showed up and created the Homo sapien that we know of through the genetic splicing of Homo erectus and Anunnaki combined. But how does that exactly, what does that have to do with, well, a couple things I would like to know. What does that have to do with after that period, like the rise of the most recent incarnation of Atlantis, and also if you were to go before that period, you would expect, okay, there's no humans as we know human beings to be today, because the humans that we know of today, that the key to that, the missing link to that type of human comes from the Anunnaki creation story that Sitchin talks about, which was after the fall of Lemuria, as Angel Bartz said. So go to that Lemuria and see what kind of creatures are you going to find. Well, if they look like human, they're not like they couldn't be the humans that are that we think of as humans today. Could they be?
The experiments that I'm referring to, the ones that I remember, were not the development of the human form. They were the splicing together of different animals and different creatures to see what else they could make. So they would take two completely different creatures, animals, or sometimes a human, and put them together to see what else they could create. Well, even think about a mermaid. I mean, a mermaid is half human and half fish, right? So the genetic experience that I remember participating in Atlantis were the scientists who would take two different creatures and morph them together, not in a petri dish so much, although they did some of that as well to create them from that, but also through the mind, through taking two different creatures and melding them together to make something different, something brand new, which caused tremendous pain and suffering to those creatures that were being experimented on. And it was done in the name of science, and it was done because they were practicing, their mind control and the ability of their mind to create things at that level. Because they could. It was an act that was done extremely selfishly, and at a great cost to the beings that suffered from that. And I was reading a Dolores Cannon book one day. Dolores Cannon, Convoluted Universe series. And I had a spontaneous past life regression or remembrance. I was reading one of her clients' accountings of being in Atlantis and doing these experiments and describing these experiments. And I burst into tears, and I knew absolutely, the memory came to me full on that I had an aspect of me that participated in that. And I was absolutely mortified because I really felt and saw the suffering that aspect of my soul had inflicted on other beings for no other purpose than to see what would happen.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very cool. No other reason.
No, it's not.
What happened.
The reason I share this story is because we're multidimensional beings. We have many, 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 many aspects of us that are alive and well in other existences and realities. At the same time, you and I are sitting here talking to one another. Atlantis is still in another reality simultaneously as our reality. We have aspects that are perpetrators, victims. We have aspects that are black, white, gay, straight, all of it. We have aspects that are all of it. And so when I talk about this variation of myself that did this experiment, The prime creator, God, source, allows us to come into these existences and essentially do what we want, have this free will to kind of fuck shit up if that's how we want to learn about ourselves and about as creative beings. We get the free will to do that. But the other side of that is there's a karma that's created. There's something that is created. There's a distortion in natural laws, a distortion in the love energy and love frequency that has to ultimately come back into balance or be healed because we choose to take those actions. So it's not like we get to do them and there's no cause and effect. There's great cause and effect. And part of my, I won't call it penance, but part of my mission here in this incarnation is, and part of all of our missions in this incarnation, is we are actually helping the other aspects of our soul, of our other soul, who have done these misdeeds or harmed others or have this unhealed karma, or actually helping them to helping ourselves on those lines of time through our acts of service in this lifetime, because this is the reality where we're doing what's called ascension, right? This is the reality where we are learning to be third dimensional beings with third dimensional consciousness for the most part, and going back to being fifth dimensional and above. We're actually reversing what we did in Atlantis, taking our bodies with us. Okay, so the reversal of the spiral of time and the last fall of Atlantis involves all of us humans, and I consider us all to be meta humans. We're all meta humans in the making, meta being beyond human, coming forth to do our soul work, shamanic work, past life regression, meditation, all these conscious realizations. We are helping ourselves not only on this line of time, but helping heal ourselves on other lines of times, so the totality of our soul goes back to ascension, not just, this being here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And regarding what triggered the before we talk about the fall of Atlantis and also the fall of Lemuria and what caused it, some of the things that they were known for talking about regarding their belief systems that you would think would be metaphysically beneficial in nature, but according to some, maybe it's not. I can't help but pick on George Kavasilis often regarding what he says about the chakras and how he says it's completely unnecessary thing to get the chakras involved in your spiritual awakening. Just go with the heart, he says. He says the chakras were a metaphysical brainwashing thing that came around in conjunction with the fall of Atlantis. And also regarding that, crystals and gemstones and how to properly use them. I've kind of Atlanticized my house this past year, ever since the lockdown started from the dreaded virus that I shouldn't name on YouTube back in March. I took advantage of this being a lockdown period and also a sixth person of the year, which has to do with the home for me. 2020 was to improve my home and buy lots of crystals, tons and tons and tons of crystals. And I had the opportunity with some credit card offers, say, spend a lot of money, get a lot of airline miles, and I took advantage of that to buy crystals and gemstones and a lot of sterling silver for that matter too. My house is decked out in crystals and gemstones, so much so that my housemaid, who also cleans my old man and dear sweet mama's house, kind of says it's like an obstacle course trying to clean your house because you've crystallized the whole place. But I mean, they say when Patricia Corey was on my show, she actually said you can never have too many crystals. Well, can you? Can you actually overdo it to a point where too much of a good thing will backfire? And when it comes to laying out the crystals around the house, I would have to think there's got to be a right way, a proper way to do it. You don't, in theory, you don't want to put them helter-skelter all over the place at random spots. If you want to make a perfect grid, there are certain crystals that resonate well with certain other crystals, and that means there's a certain way to align them. I basically just gone with my instinct in that regard, not just to research it much, but considering that crystal technology and misuse of it seem to play a key role in Atlantis falling, I have to wonder, okay, maybe I do need to take it a little bit more seriously than just trust your gut. You have to, it's one of those things that's definitely worth looking into a little bit more than that. So,
well, remember, everything is intention, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, you should have a plan. If you're crystal gridding, it's good to have at least some basic information to know how to properly set up a grid that is going to be conducive to your living situation, to your body's energy, and to even whatever intentions you have for your home and for yourself. I mean, that's always a good idea. As far as like the programming, the crystal technology in Atlantis, it was because crystals are record holders and record keepers, and because they emit a frequency, they emit an energy. It was the information downloads and the intention that went into the crystals and the crystal technology that really was the abuse. It was the intention that was malevolent instead of benevolent, and wanted to create something for a certain intention to create an effect that was not going to be favorable to humanity or to the community there.
All right, and Lemuria wasn't really known for its crystal stuff, because it seems you never really hear that much about, like, maybe
Lemurians had crystals too. Absolutely, they had crystals. They did not work with crystals in the technology sense like Atlanteans did. Their crystals were really just about holding, about tapping into the earth grids, the water grids, the elements, like really utilizing the elements, to help them, to help their whole society, and really to stay one and in unison with the elements and with the earth. They were really about the harmony and the symbiosis. So the crystals really showed them how to do that. Lemuria does not carry the same karma that Atlantis does. Even when Lemuria fell, it was not because of malevolence or misuse of power and energy. And so when Lemuria fell, they're the karma that's associated with Lemuria. And when I look at Lemuria and the Lemurian grids and the consciousness, people are always trying to bring that back. And I live on Kauai, which is known as the heart of Lemuria. It's known as the heart of Lemurian civilization. All the Hawaiian Islands are a power point for the Lemurian consciousness, and you can just feel it on the land everywhere you go. But it did not fall and does not carry the same karma that the Atlanteans do. There was not the misdeeds, there was not the misuse. It was just more about, Earth goes through cycles and changes, right? We go through natural cycles and changes. Everything is create, destroy, recreate. It's creative destruction. That's what I call it. Everything in God and nature is creative destruction. Seasons, the hours in a day, everything is in a cycle. Lemuria went through its natural creative destruction cycle of create, destroy, and then recreate into something else. That's kind of the simplistic way that I like to explain it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Also, when it comes to the stories of great floods, Michael Tsarian, in that book I mentioned, Atlantis, Alien Visitation, and G Manipulation, or whatever it was called, he said that there were two great floods. He referenced two great floods in that book. One of the ones that he referenced was something that I've heard from some other sources, such as the late Zulu shaman Credo Mutwa, who talked about some crystalline lattice covering blanket of water, special water crystal-like stuff all over the earth, and when that fell down to the earth in conjunction with the fall of Atlantis, it caused one of the great floods. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that, but it feels very on point.
Well, okay, if they had some sort of a shield, I shouldn't really call it a shield. It's more of like a crystal lattice blanket of water in some form around the earth. What would do you have any idea what it would have?
Yeah, I can see. I
can
actually see it. I can actually see it. It's really it's beautiful, and that that was placed around the earth intentionally to help with the creative destruction. We have to remember that nothing happens by accident, right? Everything happens for reasonings to create something new. And I'm not sure who placed that there. Does he say who placed that there, the crystal lattice?
well, it was created, I guess, by the whole civilization at or was it? Maybe it was a higher the creator gods who put it there,
Yeah,
and
it feels to me like it was the creator gods. And then when it came time to release the water, they did. And there's legends and myths about Poseidon being angry, at the Atlanteans, and releasing the water and bringing down the land. But I think that myth of Poseidon, taking down Atlantis is probably in conjunction with the creator gods, putting the water grids up, and then when it was time to end the experiment. And I don't think that anything happened to Atlantis as a punishment. I think, people talk about Atlantis being a failure, or being, people talk about it being a failure, about it being a mistake. That's not true. None of that's true. Atlantis was an experiment. And like with all experiments, you have a beginning, a middle, and then eventually you have an end or an outcome in one way or the other. It was just time to end the experiment for another experiment to begin. So when I work with a lot of people who feel like they're to blame for Atlantis falling, like a lot of healers and teachers who feel like they screwed up and they didn't hold the grids together, they didn't do their job, and they caused the great kingdom of Atlantis to fall into the ocean. It was their fault, and they carry this blame and this shame. And so I work through and I correct that program in people, because none of that's true. We are eternal beings, and we are constantly in some kind of great experiment on this planet, right? And some cycle or something that's happened. What we're doing right now with what we call ascension is it's another experiment. It's another way for us to use our abilities as creator gods to come in and see what we can make happen.
Right, and regarding what we can make happen, there's going to be things that help us and also things that hinder us.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that hinder us is the Archon control system.
Yeah.
And Andrew Bartzis actually said that the Archon control system, in some way, shape, or form, has existed on Earth for 900,000 years.
Yes.
Now, there's a couple things that stand out about 900,000 years that I seem to recall hearing from other sources. One, that was a time period when maybe the last Lemuria that existed first started. So, and in addition to that, there is a god from Mayan mythology named Bolon Yokde, who Eric von Daniken claims there's a tablet that says on December 21st, 2012, one of the gods that descended to the earth was Bolon Yokde, and that Bolon Yokde, according to some Mayan story, came to Earth 900,000 years ago. He's a very misunderstood god, though. There's certain things he's associated with that don't seem like it pertains at all to the other things he's associated with. But I guess that kind of makes sense if you're talking about it, if he has anything to do with an Archon control system, because the Archon control system is all about misunderstanding and making things not make any sense. So
Yeah.
is there a connection here with the Bolognote story, the Lemuria also starting in conjunction with the Archon control system? And if you think of Atlantis and Lemuria as being paradises, then you wouldn't think that there's some sort of a control system on them. Well, apparently there was. So how did it make a paradise not be a total paradise, if you get my drift, to have that control system
Right.
be present?
Well, what we what we're talking about is the organic versus the inorganic, right? Like even now, the AI and all these artificial means of this experiment on planet Earth right now that are happening to try and control us and to try and change us. And that's a direct Archon influence. It is my belief that the Archons, like all beings, really just need to go home to the Great Mother, but they don't know how to do that. So they tap into people, because there are many, many beings on this planet who are controlled by Archons, right? The Archon influence on humanity is just enormous. And we've all had Archons attached to us. I don't care who you are. at some time you have had some kind of archon attach into you and influence you. Influence your mind, influence your thoughts, maybe even influence your actions. And it's not until we realize these thoughts that are going in my head, these things that I'm doing, like they're not my own, this is not really me, and get somebody maybe to help us release that archon. And there's many ways to do those kinds of things. Heart Taurus, you know, the frequency of the heart, obviously that's a really great way. Opening up your heart and filling yourself with love and talking to that influence that is around you, and not sending it to hell or banishing it, but sending it so much love and so much taking back our sovereignty and our power, right, through ourselves and through our direct connection to source, and releasing that archon out of our field. There's lots of people who have archons with them and various other energy attachments. If we are able to do that by ourselves or with help from another healer or whatever, when we release those archons, when I work with people in that way, I work with myself, I just send them back to source. I send them back to the Great Mother. And I really believe these archons are attracted to humans because they feel we are our gateway. We are their gateway home. How do you feel about that?
Yes, it resonates well to hear that our way home and whatnot. So yes, I could go with that, and like to mention some of the other, switch gears maybe for a little bit here and talk about the other things here in your bio. Sacred feminine and to the element of water. People think of water being feminine energy dominant. Likewise, they would think of fire related things as being masculine energy dominant. I do seem to have more fire than water in me, considering that I'm a fire tiger and an Aries, which is a fire sign. However, the water in me comes from the fact that I am a Pisces in the sidereal astrology field, which deals with the fixed location of the stars and is different time periods, different signs, likewise, than tropical Western astrology, in which I'm an Aries. So now, someone like me who am I saying, well, it's kind of a bad way of looking at it to assert that I have more fire than water in me because I have one water sign versus two fire signs from three different areas of astrology and horoscope reading? Or am I maybe onto something when I try to look at it that way? I'm trying to ask you to help me understand myself a little better, I will admit. But I do want you to also help explain the whole idea behind sacred feminine and what it is and how it connects to water, and does also, as I would guess, sacred masculine connect to fire, if there's anything you can offer about that.
We'll go back to the astrology really quick. So you have a lot of fire signs in your chart, which usually will indicate, usually if you have a lot of a specific element, usually you will hold that element as your primary, that'll be your primary element. I was born in a grand water trine, so water is, I mean, I am water. But it does not mean that just because you are, you know, a Taurus, that does not mean your Earth will be your primary strongest element. It could be, but it doesn't mean it has to be. I've known lots of mer beings who are not a water sign. There's some other sign, but water is their primary element. So you will know what's your primary element, not only by your astrology, but what you feel most kin to, what calls to you the most. So you probably naturally just jive with fire, right? You just like, fire's my thing. It doesn't even matter that it's your birth sign. It's just fire, the element of fire, working with fire feels the best and the easiest for you. Just like water feels the best for me. But that doesn't mean that somebody who is a water sign is necessarily going to feel like water is their strongest sign, because you know, other things play a big part. A rising sign plays a really big part in what comprises our horoscope personality. And actually, the older I get, my rising happens to be Aquarius, which pours out the waters of consciousness to the collective. The older I get, the more I feel like I resonate with Aquarius, which is an air sign. So I bring that in, like in tandem with all the water that I carry, And then, in the middle, I've got my moon, which is Libra, which is the balancer of all things. So I'm balancing this water energy with this air energy. The water is Lemuria. The air is Atlantis. And in the middle, I've got my Libra working for the collective. I designed my chart very, very well. Part of my mission is to help to reunite Atlantis and Lemuria. Lots of people have bad feelings about Atlantis because what they feel the Atlanteans did to them, or what they did in Atlantis. A lot of people have some not so nice feelings about Atlantis. So I kind of work as a bridge through my sacred feminine and through the element of water, through the Mer. I'm kind of like an ambassador while I'm helping to reunite these two lands that were separated by war. And because one is masculine, one is feminine, Atlantis is the masculine. I believe when that war happened between Atlantis and Lemuria, and they held that balance of the masculine and feminine together in unison, that rift between them actually created the split between humanity's masculine and feminine internally. That internal balance that we're all striving to get to, right? Balance our masculine and feminine. It was that war that created that split internally in humanity that we are working now to get back to. And that part of that entails the reunionization or the harmonization and the balancing of the Atlantean and Lemurian consciousnesses merging and marrying back together in the hearts of humans.
Okay, sounds pretty interesting and pretty cool there. You mentioned you seem to resonate with Aquarius. Aquarius doesn't seem to be in any of my signs, except for the fact that it's according to some article out there. Got to use discernment on these things, but it said that the tiger, my Chinese zodiac sign, the Western astrology equivalent to that is Aquarius. And I'm
Okay.
thinking, where did that come from? And it's not like in my sign anywhere except for this one little out of left field thing that seems to try and be connecting to unrelated fields. So how do I make sense of that? And does that mean maybe this is a good time period for me, considering everybody's talking about since the Jupiter and Saturn thing, that's last winter solstice, it's all about Age of Aquarius now and moving into it. So does that pertain to good things for me?
Well, I mean, Aquarius is air sign, and I feel a lot of air energy in you. You have a lot of Atlantean-esque and air energy in you. So your energy is really familiar to me. That just happens to be like an energy that I connect with really well. And so I don't know. I don't remember what your original question was about that. A good thing for you? I mean, sure, why not? I think we're really here to harmonize and balance all the elements within us. My weakest element actually happens to be Earth. I had to work very, very hard on connecting with Gaia herself and working with the Earth energy and with elementals, because I just want to be in the water all the time. I love the fire element. I love working with the fire and just all the things that I only have one sign in fire. My Venus is in Aries, and that's it. But apparently that's enough. I have a lot of fire within me. I have a very fiery personality. So it's like we're the totality of this huge picture, and whatever astrology, whether it's the tropical or the others, the Vedic, that you resonate with, I would say explore it all. Take none of it too seriously. Look at it all as a blueprint, as possibilities, because we are not tied to the blueprint of our astrology chart. It's a great way to learn about ourselves, but we really are here to transcend and become meta-humans and masters of it all. I mean, at least that's my opinion.
Okay, since you mentioned meta, or that phrase there, let's get into the next talking point. You seem to have a few dealings of sorts with Archangel Metatron, and there's a couple of things
Yes.
I'd like to point out about this that I think are significant that I'd like you to maybe touch on after you give your stuff as well. But Metatron apparently is look, you don't want to make any archangel more powerful or less powerful than any other archangel. But I have heard people say if you are forced to pick the king of the archangels, it would have to be de facto Metatron for the reasons, and maybe you can explain what those reasons are. Also, Jim Self pointed out that on the Mayan calendar, 12/21/2012 and date, Metatron on that day came into Earth and said, from this day forward, every being that incarnates in this reality will incarnate in a fourth dimensional reality, even though it may seem like third dimensional to us, because that's what we've seen our whole lives and that's what we're accustomed to. From a vibrational perspective, it is that Mayan calendar end date was a shift in consciousness, and it was a shift into the fourth dimension. That so says Jim Self, and Metatron played a big role in that. One more thing about Metatron, though, that seems to be of a little bit of a down nature. And I don't know where the guy who researched this came up with this, but I recently there was a video brought to my attention by Joseph Reyna, sent the link to it. Had Joseph Reyna on my show, he sent the link about this presentation where a guy said in November 2023, he explained there's two spirals of energy. There's a crystal spiral, which crystal is not spelled like with a C R, it's spelled with a K. And he also said there's the other spiral, which is the Metatron. He referred to it as a Metatronic, but he seemed to present it as a negative in nature. He seemed to say that it was the hex spiral, so to speak. Hex being like a spell, like a hexagon, and also Saturn, like Saturn being a very Illuminati prominent
Right.
planet, and it has the hexagon on one of its poles, and that's also where the hex comes from. He was saying that timeline in November 2023, he actually said a good thing is going to happen at that time period. That's when the crystal line, the good one, is going to officially and entirely overpower and overpass the Metatronic hex energy timeline, which will lead to a more prosperous future after that period. But why would he refer to that energy spiral as Metatronic? If you would think of Metatron being a good archangel who wants to help humanity, why would he refer to it as a negative spiral of energy?
Okay, so you know about inversions and symbol inversion, right?
Yeah.
Everything has a polarity. If you invert it, it has an opposite. So Archangel Metatron, and I love when you said if you had to pick one archangel, you would pick Metatron because he's my BFF. I have been working very closely with Metatron. My entire back is tattooed Metatron's cube. And I have this depiction of all four elements in the outer spheres and the three phases of the moon at the top and the earth at the bottom. And it's this beautiful, beautiful tattoo on my body there because he asked me to put it there. And you don't say no to an archangel. And after I marked my body with his cube and we kind of continued on our journey together, he said, Mira, just trust me. He says, just trust me. You'll find out later why we're doing this. And sacred geometry in general, and I'm gonna get to your question to what you said about that Metatronic frequency. I'm gonna circle back around that. Sacred geometry is a portal and a gateway to other dimensions. If you put, the Flower of Life or Metatron's cube up on the wall, even a black and white printout of it, if you stare at it, you will see it move. Like you will see it three-dimensionally and multi-dimensionally begin to move. And it actually harmonizes the left and right hemispheres of your brain. It's like a moving meditation for your eyes. So when I moved to Kauai, I was teaching some sacred geometry classes online and whatnot. And I met a guy who had a sacred geometry clothing company. It's a crystal infused. He was micronizing crystals into dust and putting them into ink and then screen printing them onto organic clothing. And I bought that company from him. And originally, when I had my tattoo done, I do yoga. And I thought, well, some people behind me are just going to see Metatron's cube. They're going to get the impression of the sacred geometry. It's going to be good for them, even if they don't know what it is, even if they don't know, because sacred geometry is projective. It projects out to everybody in your sphere. And I thought, well, cool, I've got this on my body. It's going to help my energy. It's going to help other people who see it. Nay, nay, nay. I buy the Sacred Geometry clothing company, and he says to me, Ameera, you're going to take sacred geometry out to the world, to, you know, the Muggle population, to people who don't even know what it is, through nice clothing. You're going to take sacred geometry out to the collective. And I've watched sacred geometry even from 4 years ago when I started doing this, seeing the awakening to what sacred geometry is and what it does to help us, like, just completely blow up. So going back to Metatron, and there is a teaching out there, there is a thought that Metatron was a fallen angel, and that his geometry is something that is against nature and something that is malevolent to humanity. And what I teach people is that it's not the sacred geometry in Metatron that was distorted. It was the inversion, it was his consciousness that was taken and inversion. Because you can take a consciousness, just like a crystal. You can take a crystal, you can program it for whatever you want. Like if you want to program a crystal for not nice stuff, you can do that with a lot of probably karmic repercussions coming, but you can do that. You can also do that with shapes and symbols, sacred geometry, and a consciousness of any being. You can pervert that and invert that. And we see that with, symbols with these corporations. You know what I'm talking about? How all these big corporations use sacred geometry and they use symbolism in their logos to draw people into their vortex, right? And they intend their symbols and their logos, and they put an energy in there. So when you see those logos, those corporate logos, you are actually entraining yourself to whatever intention this corporation has put into their logo. Like, CBS has the eye, right? Which in itself, if you look at it, that eye is kind of innocuous, but is it? Is this an all-seeing eye of a corporation, of a media company that's trying to pull you into, its polarity or into its intention? So Metatron's cube, Archangel Metatron, and that consciousness was usurped by archonic energy. It was inverted with the intention of creating something out of it that it was not meant to be. So when we get to that 2023 timeline that you talked about, and this is the first time I've ever heard about it, but I do absolutely believe that there is enough light, liquid plasma, light, crystal energy, whatever you want to call it, coming into the earth, that it is going to start to take those inversions of energy and flip them back around to their original intention, to their original God source energy.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know anything about the that timeline until Joseph Reyna sent me the link to the video. And when it comes to giving time, giving dates is always one of those things that spiritual people
Right.
might want to try to avoid, because you'll have egg in your face if it doesn't happen. However, based on probabilities and all, you can make estimates. And there are 3 things in particular coming up within the next 3 years or so that seem to really stand out from a collective consciousness standpoint. One was the thing in November 2023 that I mentioned regarding the Metatronic negative energy time wave being overpowered and overcome by the crystal one. But before that is supposed to happen around, and this is Indigo Child Mathias De Stefano talking here. He said maybe around the summer of 2022, the summer of next year, a year and a half from now, there's going to be some sort of a interlocking of the energy grids around the earth, and the result of this, well, humanity is going to be able to get along with each other a lot better than they otherwise would if that did not happen as it's supposed to happen in the summer of 2022. So it's going to be kind of like a summer of love hippie kind of thing for all of humanity then, except we're not going to be lazy and sit on our bums and smoke pot like the hippies. We're going to be a little more I am sure a little more up to raising the consciousness of the earth in a positive way and do something about it, not be lazy. But that's the second thing. The third thing has to do with the fall of the Roman Empire of the modern era that is the United States of America, around the April 2024 time period, also in conjunction with the end of the Pluto and Capricorn cycle. There's that eclipse that's going to crisscross America on April 8th, 2024, which is actually the day after my 38th birthday, and I intend to be in Carbondale, Illinois that day to see the eclipse, which is the crisscross point of that eclipse and the one that happened in August 2017, because there's the word on the street is America is going into a civil war, which is going to morph into more of an American Revolution as we get closer and closer to 2024. And this eclipse that's going to crisscross on April 8th, 2024, that's kind of like maybe the signaling the ending point of this civil war, soon to be revolution, next American Revolution, that will result in much more pleasant things for Earth. So does that all make sense to you? Like everybody will get along better because of the grid work in summer 2022 and the 2024 no more world suffering from America's wrath as the Roman Empire of the modern era. It's going to be a lot more pleasant.
Well, I gotta say, I hope you're right. That's what I'm hoping for. I think the next few years are going to be very challenging on many fronts. My hope is that, I mean, we might need a great equalizer, Andrew, for everybody to really get it. We might need something to happen globally that is so intense that it has no choice but to bring people together. Because, right now, the polarity is very, very strong. It's very intense, and it doesn't look at this time like there's much of a way out. And maybe things just have to get so crappy for a little while. Like maybe the administration that is in office or thinks that they are in office right now has to do some stuff that's so shady and so terrible that everybody goes, whoa, hold on. None of us, we're not having any of this. Everybody out. Maybe that's the way it goes down.
Well, yes, and so many different schools of thought on what exactly went wrong. If it's interesting, use those words "went wrong" because when they thought that Mr. T was going to be the president for a second term on the day that it was officially the end of his presidency, and the new guy, the demented new guy, came in. It's funny, a horoscope thing that I had downloaded said the alignment of the planets is going to cause that day is going to cause a lot of people to wonder what went wrong,
Yeah.
and it makes perfect sense. And in addition to that, there are so many things going on right now that make you wonder what's going on is not what we're led to believe is. Just look in the photographs of the White House that Demented Joe is in. There's cars in the windows. There should be a lawn there. The wall furnishings are completely different. The executive orders he's signing don't seem to have any writing in them.
It's such a contrived reality. It's so contrived that I think we're going to get to a point that even the ones who still want to buy into the contrived reality because they feel safer there, we're going to get to a point where it's going to be so blatant that it's fake that they're going to have to wake up. They're going to have to realize it.
Yes, and it was also said Tolek did upload a video back in March, April during the start of the lockdown period. He didn't say it was the good guys that did it, but he seemed to be hinting that the whole global lockdown because of the virus, that really wasn't done by the system of domination and control. It was actually done by the alliance of white hats and good guys who were trying to overpower the system for the good of humanity, because they wanted humanity to be locked down at that time in order to try to take out a lot of child trafficking rings and banking cartel operations. And when there were a lot of buses in the White House recently that around the White House area and going through D.C., going in and out of the city, the District of Columbia, and Nyla Nugent, 3D to 5D Consciousness channel. She can't upload it on YouTube anymore, unfortunately, but she has videos on other programs, and I do watch them. Um, she pointed out this is definitely the child trafficking, all the children being rescued and going in these buses. And she actually showed there was a period of time where the White House was on sale on Zillow, believe it or
I
not,
saw
for a
that.
yes, for about $500 million. It's not on sale anymore, though. I did check that after that, and it says it's not on sale. But for that to have been the case, um, wow. There are others who are also in DC saying that the whole city does not is basically a ghost town now. So the idea that Demented Joe is actually in the building is no, that's not what's going on. So if there really is
Yeah.
operations going on behind the scenes to try to shut down the banking cartels and the Illuminati secret societies, what's left of them on Earth, and I say what's left of them to stress also that Alex Collier did say on a Goldfish Report interview back in the not too distant past that the overlords, the Draco reptilian overlords, are gone. Which, and if that's the case, then all these what's left of the Illuminati control system and the banking cartels, they don't have the luxury of having reptilian alien minions from much higher up saying, "Stop hassling our minions, or we're going to make life miserable for you white hats and good guys." Well, no, the you would have to think the white hats and the good guys have a lot more ability to shut down the system at a much faster rate now because there's no more bad guys from higher ups that are going to come and
Well, you
save
would
the.
think so, right? And so the best
Yeah.
thing that can happen is, the busloads of the children, the arrests, all these things that they say are going down need to be on TV. Somebody needs to take over Fox and CNN, like take over their channels and like shoot this out to the entire world. And then it's over. And then it's game over. That might be the great equalizer. That might be what it takes. Because a
Well,
lot of people, I have so many liberal friends that they do not believe any of this is happening.
okay. Well, they're probably living a lie, considering if what Benjamin Fulford says is true about George Soros being dead for a while. But that's a whole new can of words. Let's not go there. Do I want to address the I've never heard this name before. Switching gears here, she brings forth messages in your bio. It says you bring more forth messages from Ocean Mother Yemaya. I don't know if I've heard that name. Is that
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
Maya in that name related to the star Maya, which is directly connected with the Mayan civilization and their consciousness, as some have drawn, or is it completely
It is
unrelated?
not. So
Okay.
Yemaya is the African Mother Ocean goddess. So we all, long story short, we all belong to an oversoul, and our oversoul has an oversoul. And the oversoul, the extension, Yemaya is my oversoul, and I work as an extension of her through this human body. So, meaning I am a part of her, she is a part of me, and I carry her energy within me. And the energy is that of, the mother of the fishes. We all have an oversoul. Some people have various beings, great beings, an archangel or a god or a goddess or what have you, as their oversoul and their direct lineage here on earth from that being. So she is not only the mother of my soul, but part of my soul. And so it is her wisdom and her energy and kind of her mission as an extension of her that I bring forward.
Thank you for touching on that. What else can we discuss here in the time we have left? Got about half an hour left. Okay, you mentioned that Hawaii is the remnants of Lemurian continent. They say the Polynesian islands, to a great extent, are also the remnants of Lemuria.
Yes.
Although if you go into the Atlantic Ocean, there doesn't seem to be much of a remnants of Atlantis. The only one that exists is the island of Bermuda, which I've been to
Hmm.
3 times. Great island. Never been to Hawaii though. I want to try to go there, but then again, maybe this year's not the one, not the year for. Considering my Chinese horoscope said metal oxes, not good years for tigers to travel. But Hawaii, like I said, it's one of those places that a lot of people would sure want to go to. And Now, when I went to Bermuda, I did have some crazy experiences regarding energies and all. Like the energies in me became so, like, seemed to charge me up so much that I felt sick, even though I didn't have a cold, and I just wanted to lie down, and I had a splitting
Mhm.
headache that wouldn't. And when I discussed this with some people on my show, and they said, "Well, you were in Bermuda. That's a remnant of Atlantis. The great energies
Right.
are there." So would I probably suffer the same fate if I were to go to Hawaii? And I really tried to make a spiritual retreat out of it, and went crazy, like walking long walks on trails with Egyptian healing rods, and meditating on the beaches and all. Would it actually backfire on me, and I'd get my like mad metaphysical headaches and
No, you know,
body
not
pains from?
necessarily. Like, but there are people because I do retreats here and I visit with a lot of people who come to Kauai. And the first time I came to Kauai, I completely fell apart because I was home. People will come here and they don't know or how it's affecting them so profoundly. But I've seen many people just fall to their knees, and weep, or they're completely wiped out and they've got to spend some time in their hotel sleeping because the energy here spins very, very fast. Lemuria feels, Kauai and the Hawaiian Islands feel like home to just about everybody who comes here, even if they're not even aware of what Lemuria is, even if they've never heard of it. People come here and they come back here because they have very profound experiences, and that feeling of one, it's like you're in the fifth dimension on Kauai. Like, this is the fifth dimension. Everything alive is alive, vibrating and breathing, and it's very easy to manifest here, but you have to be very intentional and very in alignment with your manifestations. It's much different than living on the mainland, or trying to live, in these big cities. It really is a magical playground, but Kauai will also school you. Mama Kauai will school you real hard, and anything you need to heal or anything you need to look at and face as far as your shadow self goes. So it sounds like when you went to Florida, and that is the Atlantean part of the United States. It sounds like your
Not
soul.
Florida, Bermuda, which is actually I believe still a part of the UK
Right,
colonies.
right, right, right.
Right.
That whole area is an Atlantean hub. And so if you were drawn to go there and had those specific experiences, your DNA was getting worked on, your cellular memory upgrade, your subconscious, everything was feeling the effect of a soul remembrance and a resonance with that land, even if it didn't feel very good.
Right.
You might
So
not have that experience here. If you came to Hawaii, it might be much softer and gentler, and you might feel like you've just entered a wonderful, magical, mythical, beautiful land.
okay. Um, and the um, the fact that maybe we'll turn this into a little bit of a history lesson here. Um, Hawaii, it never really should have become the 50th state, because
No.
the history of it shows that, and this is Dave Champion, the author of Income Tax, Sharing the Myths, talking. He said that the United States basically forced the kings and queens of Hawaii, Hawaii kings and queens, before it became a state, to hand over Hawaii against their will to become
Yeah,
part
Hawaii,
of the
the
American.
Hawaiian Islands were illegally annexed. They were illegally seized and annexed. That's correct.
Yeah.
The,
Was
the
it?
Hawaiians, go ahead.
Yeah, William McKinley, was that during his presidency? When, because I seem to recall there was a children's book about presidents, and I remember the page about William McKinley. They had him dressed in a hula skirt, like suggesting he had something to do with the Hawaiian Islands. Um, that would have been
Oh,
like
maybe. I'm not sure.
1899, 1900. Um,
What I, hold on. I'm going to Google it real quick. What year was
oh,
Hawaii illegally annexed?
yeah,
I
because
think it was 48. We'll see. Oh, 1893.
Okay,
Okay.
before okay, well, William McKinley was president, I think, in 1896, and he would have served a second term had he not been assassinated. It's interesting. Donald Trump, before he left. Oh, I mentioned his name. I should have mentioned his name. This is going to cost me. He before he left office, he took down a picture of one of the George Bushes and Bill Clinton, and replaced it with a picture of William McKinley and also Teddy Roosevelt. The thing about McKinley that really stands out, though, he got America on the gold standard. Donald Trump did actually want to, if he served a second term, did want to put America on the gold standard, and that, according to Simon Parks anyway, was the really big kicker that made the
Right.
that makes sure that he didn't get on, because they don't want to lose the fractional reserve banking system. Although I'm talking about William McKinley all of a moment and what role he played in the islands. I remember having maybe about a little less than a year ago, the universe telling me watch something about the assassination of William McKinley all of a sudden, and I did. And the guy who assassinated him, Leon Czolgosz, there isn't too much evidence to suggest that he was a mind-controlled patsy of the bankers. Unlike the other presidents who got assassinated, there is evidence that the bankers got a patsy involved to do the work or something to that effect. But with McKinley, it's not so obvious, and it's funny how the universe was telling me watch a documentary about his assassination and his work, and shortly thereafter, Trump puts up the the image of McKinley in the office, and now all of a sudden I'm talking about him playing a role in the annexation of the Hawaiian Islands during his presidency. But you said it was 1893.
1893 came up as when it was annexed, and the Hawaiian people want their land back. They want to be sovereign. They never want to be a part of the United States.
Yeah.
And there's been a sovereignty movement within the Hawaiian Kingdom for many decades that has been unsuccessful. Obviously, I don't know if the Hawaiian people will ever reclaim their land as sovereign, if that gets to happen for them. I really do wish that for them. The way it went down was not okay. And if they do get to have their sovereignty back at some point, there will probably be, some decisions about, us haoles, us who are not born on Hawaii, who gets to stay and who gets to go. That there may be some of that discussion. And if I am invited to stay on Kauai, I will be absolutely grateful, because I just cannot imagine living anywhere else. However, if I should be invited to be excused to go back to the mainland, because they need to do what they need to do for their land and for who gets to live here, then I will be just eternally grateful that I've had the years that I've had here. This is very special and sacred land. I am not Hawaiian, obviously, but I have great respect for the Hawaiian people and the culture. And, this is their land. And if they get to have that back someday, then, we'll all just get to have our memories. So, Andrew, I would say if you want to come to Hawaii, maybe you want to do it sooner than later.
Yes, will look into it, and be at Tulloch's conference or maybe one of your retreats.
And I'll do a retreat. I can't do a retreat until, the island opens back up. We're
What's
under
the deal with that?
Well, every island is a little different. On Kauai, you have to take a COVID test within 3 days before you come. And then when you come here, you have to have a negative COVID test. Then you've got to go in what's called a resort bubble. There are certain designated resorts on this island that you go to for 3 days and pay for, obviously. Take another COVID test, and it has to be negative before they'll let you out on the island. The other alternative is, like when I went to the mainland for the holidays, I really didn't want to take a COVID test. So I opted for the 10-day quarantine. So I came back without a COVID test, and I had to stay in my home for 10 days, and people had to bring me food and take care of my mail and whatnot. But I really felt that if I didn't have to take a test, I wasn't going to do it. So I just used the time to kind of go within and, all the things that you do when you're in when you're quarantining as a healthy person. I made the most of it. The National Guard is on the island and will check on you. I was checked on twice to make sure that I was in my home. So There is and there's no COVID here, by the way. There's maybe 6 or 7 cases. That's it. Nobody's in the hospital. So the pressure from, from the government, from the mayor and from the governor to really keep the Hawaiian Islands and especially Kauai on the severe lockdown, and it's affected our economy, obviously, tremendously. Because for many months, nobody could come here. You couldn't come here unless you took a 2-week quarantine. So of course, no visitor is going to come. Nobody's supporting the economy. And so it's been a really interesting set of circumstances to live within, to be, kind of in prison on paradise.
Yes, and since you did mention the virus, recently watched one of the new Cryon videos, and he actually did say in that video that we have not actually gotten the whole true story regarding the virus and what it is and where it came from. If came from could be the proper way of talking
Yeah.
about it. And it's really interesting how sensitive subject and all, but maybe it's worth talking about this for just a brief moment. Um, People like David Icke have caused a brouhaha by saying there is no virus, it's all a scam, it's just a genetic material exosome that they're testing for that resembles a virus. However, before he was saying that, Icke did mention that there are a couple of bioterror labs in the Wuhan area of China that's not so far from where
Right.
the place started. So why did he decide to do a complete 180 from that theory that it was a Wuhan lab thing to the whole thing is a scam, it's just a genetic material exosome, and people are dying of other things, and the media is lying to us, and this lockdown is caused for other reasons. Well, Ike, his brain is wired to see a conspiracy in everything, it seems, and some people that say the virus does exist say that's where he's kind of flawed in that in this. But again, he did say before he believed that what he believes now. He said it was created, suggested it was created in the Wuhan labs.
Right.
So we like I said, we don't really have the whole story here when people are giving two different stories at different points. But to hear that we haven't heard the whole story yet, Cryon says, and Cryon also pointed out, like this whole thing about economies being shut down. I mean, doesn't it make sense that if we want to replace society with technologies that would provide for everybody and enable us to quit our damn 9 to 5 jobs and actually be a little more free and not have to worry about starving children in Africa dying anymore because they get everything provided for them and everything else? And don't you think in order for that stuff to be released, we kind of would actually have to shut down everything that existed before then? And so, well, this is sort of maybe, dare I say, a practice run to see how we can do without the stuff being released yet. I mean, if we can manage with everything being shut down to a great extent, then we can certainly manage when the technology is released. And there are a lot of people saying there will be great shock in the coming upcoming time period regarding technologies being released. And okay, well, how long do you have to lock down an economy? I mean, would they actually want to keep the economy locked down? I mean, they don't want to. If there's a plan to do that on the part of the alliance, you would think they don't want to get the economy started because they don't want people being satisfied with the way things were, because the way things were was the system of enslavement.
Yeah.
You would think they want.
There's so many people who hated their job. They hated their 9 to 5 or whatever they were doing, and they were absolutely miserable, and they were a slave. And so, one of the things this whole lockdown has enabled maybe a segment of the population to do is now they can finally do what they've always wanted to do. Like that thing they've always wanted to invent or that create or do out in life, and they couldn't because they were stuck working 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day and maybe commuting. They're at home now on their computers, or they're doing whatever in their community, and they're actually living their purpose or starting to live their purpose instead of living in this hamster wheel. So I understand what you're trying to say.
And you understand what I'm trying to say, but one has to wonder, can it actually play out that way and be successful? I mean, you've heard Corey Good talk about how he thinks humans naturally can't handle the truth.
Mm-hmm.
If you dump all the information about ETs being real and having been real in ancient astronaut terms, and also all this technology that would make it possible to provide for everybody to the point where we can get rid of money entirely and quit our 9 to 5 jobs and
Yeah.
everybody could get everything provided, would humanity be able to deal with that, not just from the shock of it coming standpoint, but do the ETs actually trust us to not become lazy, apathetic couch potatoes who think, oh, I don't have to give a shit about life anymore because everything's provided for me?
Well,
I mean,
you just as in Atlantis, we don't know because we're in an experiment. This
okay,
is
well,
another great experiment. And the question, I know you're asking like, rhetorical questions, but they're really good ones. Like, what are we going to do with the hand we've been dealt? Like, what is humanity? What choice are we going to take individually, collectively about how we're going to handle this and how we're going to rise up and how we're going to create, a new Earth society? What are we going to do?
mhm. Yes. Right. I was sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't on mute, or I was on mute. But anyhow, how to handle it and how humans can deal with it and progress with it. Alex Collier in the same um, thing where he mentioned I see great where the draconian reptilian overlords are gone. He concluded that talk saying I see great things for humanity in the many coming years. Well, not many great things so far now because there's still the lockdown and everything. But when this stuff comes out, um, what time frame are we looking at when the ETs can show up and actually literally land on the White House lawn and say, okay, we exist. The ancient astronaut theorists and UFO nuts were right all along. We've always existed, and now you have no choice but to believe in us because we're showing you to our showing ourselves to you. I mean, that kind of disclosure. People like Brad Johnson said, oh, Giles Adronis said, won't happen until 2050. He gave a date based on probabilities and the rate at which energy is rising. But it's kind of sad. Eric Von Daniken won't be alive to see he was right. Is one sad thing to that. But I know I will. I'm sure I will. But does it have to be that long?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I am.
You know, I sure hope it's not going to be that long. I think that there will be starts and stops and leaps forwards and setbacks. Um, I, some of us, I mean, if you go into the woo-woo talk of living in a fifth dimensional Earth, there are going to be many different realities, different timelines that we will individually and collectively go to. And humans across the board will have very diverse experience. So the experience that you have might be very, very different through this whole everything we're going through than what I have. I think it's going to really depend on you as an individual, what you choose, what you believe, how you use your creative abilities and your resourcefulness and your faith and trust in God and in yourself. And some of us will begin to live like they say in 2050, very, very quickly. Others, it will take a few years. Others, it might take a few decades. So I don't think there's one end goal for the whole of humanity. I think we're all there is no finish line. Life itself is the goal. I think we are all going to progress as our soul, as our soul is ready to participate in everything, all the changes that are coming. That's the best answer I can give. My soul, your soul, everybody's soul, it's all going to be different as far as what we, what we accomplish, what we clear, what we heal, and the experience that we're going to have. I think it's going to be too varied to really say this is the end date where it's all going to be better, or whatever you want to say.
All right, got about 8 minutes left, so I guess I'll give you the opportunity now to make a sales pitch out of this.
Okay.
Please tell us about your retreats, what they entail, why people should pay the money to go to them, and what's not included. Also, I'm interested in hearing about your conscious clothing line, and also any past life regression work that you can do and how that will work out, and the things for sale on your website. So and plug your website too, and that.
Okay,
So
awesome. Thank you. So you can,
contact info too as well. So go, you got the floor to close.
thank you. You can find me at ameerabeth.com. That's my professional work site. As far as retreats go, right now I'm doing personal retreats. If you want to come to Kauai, keep in mind there's some quarantine restrictions and things that are going on. But I do couples and individual, maybe small group retreats, and I plan them very individually. I plan them according to who you are, what you want to do, how much time you want to spend. Group retreats and things like that hopefully will happen again maybe towards the end of the year as things shift and change. But if you're interested in coming to Kauai and having a guide, then you can just reach out to me through my website, or my phone number is on there also. I work as an advanced past life regressionist, taking people into other realms and realities for healings, and then also the Atlantean 13 chakra template. I work to help and realign that, as well as Atlantean and Lemurian reconnection sessions, which if you have an affinity towards one land or the other, want to recall a gift, recall a lifetime, get some more information, we can do that as well. Wisdom Wear is my conscious clothing company. That's wisdomwear.org. And I crystal infused. I take Andara crystals, micronize them into dust, put them into the ink of sacred geometry prints, and then screen print onto organic bamboo and cotton, hoodies, t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, tank tops, all kinds of fun, conscious, high vibrational clothing. And then, I'll be doing a class at the end of this month with Archangel Metatron. An Activate Archangel Metatron, Activate Metatron's Cube in your field course. It's 4 hours long, and I will take you through exactly who Metatron is, how he came to be, what he's capable of, what he does for humanity, as well as break down Metatron's Cube, break down all the sacred geometry configurations very, very simply. I'm good at taking big esoteric concepts and breaking them down so that they're digestible and understandable, to anybody. Understanding more about Metatron's Cube, sacred geometry. Metatron and I will place Metatron's Cube in your field, activated actually in your energy field, and then I will teach you how to offer Metatron's Cube activations to other people if you desire. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on me, Andrew.
All right. Very, very enlightening, very interesting. Definitely learned a few things myself throughout this talk, and I will get this up to the internet. I'll try to get in a convertible form to download it tonight, but everybody's got to wait 2 to 3 weeks before it's public for everybody. God, I hope some people subscribe to Patreon. It really hurts me to see that I'm not making any money yet off that, even though I've tried to do it, try to monetize my work and show that everybody wants to be done with money. Everybody wants to, I can't do it overnight. I'm sure we have to get on the gold standard before we can transition to a world with no money at all. But if what Tolik said about the this lockdown really being done by the good guys, actually as a way of under the guise of shutting down what's left of the control system, then well, I'm sure that it will come sooner rather than later, and we can all transition to this world. But sometimes a shock to the system isn't the best way to do it. So be patient. It's kind of ironic I say that because there's an Aries and a fire tiger. I'm not very good at patience, but I am trying to work on that. and everybody else, work on your weak links, work on your strong links, work on everything to wake us all up, and maybe even go to one of your retreats. I'm sure that'll raise a lot of people's consciousness. So
Let me know when you're ready to come out, Andrew. I'll show you around. I'll show you all the great places.
Awesome. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Aloha.